The massive ships of the Zephyrian Empire filled the space above their home planet like silver clouds. Admiral Vexthan stood on the command deck of the flagship, watching as the last of the assault vessels docked with the orbital stations. The Earth mission was complete. Another world had fallen to the Empire's might, but something felt wrong. Vexthan had commanded dozens of planetary conquests over his long career. He knew the sounds and sights that followed a successful campaign. There should have been celebration in the corridors, soldiers sharing stories of battle, prisoners being processed, and cargo holds full of treasure from the conquered world. Instead, the ships returned in complete silence. The docking bays were quiet as the soldiers filed out of their transport ships. These were the Empire's finest warriors, veterans who had crushed resistance on 100 worlds. They had faced enemies with claws like swords, beings that could shoot lightning from their eyes and creatures that stood 3 times their height. Nothing had ever broken their spirit, yet now they walked like ghosts. Captain Zorak approached the Admiral with his report pad. His usually confident demeanor was replaced by something Vexthan had never seen before, confusion mixed with fear. "Admiral," Zorak said, his voice barely above a whisper, "the mission reports are incomplete." "What do you mean incomplete?" Vexthan took the pad and scrolled through the data. Page after page showed the same thing. Mission objectives completed, no casualties reported, enemy resistance eliminated. But the details section of every report was blank. "The squad leaders won't talk, sir. None of them. They confirm the planet is pacified, but they won't say how it happened or what they encountered down there." Vexthan frowned. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. "Have you tried ordering them to report?" "Yes, sir. They just stand there and stare. Medical says they're physically fine, but—" Zorak paused, looking around nervously. "Sir, I've never seen soldiers like this. They're afraid to even look at each other." The Admiral decided to see for himself. He made his way to the debriefing chambers where the returning soldiers were supposed to give their detailed reports. The large room that should have been buzzing with activity was nearly silent. Hundreds of soldiers sat in perfect rows, staring straight ahead. None of them spoke. None of them moved unless ordered. "Sergeant Mordak," Vexthan called to one of his most decorated veterans. The soldier had led successful missions on 15 different worlds and was known for his detailed battle reports. Mordak slowly turned his head toward the Admiral. His eyes were wide and hollow, like someone who had seen something that broke his understanding of the universe. "Report on the Earth mission, Sergeant." "Mission completed, sir," Mordak said in a flat voice. "Planet pacified. No enemy contact." "No enemy contact? What about the humans? Intelligence said there were billions of them." Mordak's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. After a long moment, he simply repeated, "Mission completed, sir." Vexthan tried questioning a dozen more soldiers. Each gave the same mechanical response. "Mission completed. Planet pacified. No details. No stories. No explanation of what had happened to make the mighty Zephyrian assault force look like frightened children." Dr. Krisa, the fleet's chief medical officer, met with Vexthan in his private office later that evening. She carried a thick folder of medical reports and her expression was deeply troubled. "Admiral, I've completed initial examinations of all 50,000 soldiers who participated in the Earth assault," she said, setting the folder on his desk. "Physically, they're in perfect health. Not a single combat injury, not even a bruise. But mentally, what's wrong with them? They're experiencing a form of trauma I've never seen before. It's not battle shock. Their brain scans show none of the typical patterns we see after combat. It's something else entirely. They're terrified, but not of being hurt or killed. They're terrified of knowledge." Vexthan picked up one of the brain scan images. Even to his untrained eye, he could see the unusual patterns of activity. Knowledge of what? That's what I can't figure out. Whatever they learned on Earth, it fundamentally changed how they see the universe, and they're all refusing to share that knowledge, even with each other. The Admiral stood and walked to his window, looking out at the vast fleet surrounding them. These ships represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian military power. They had conquered 300 worlds and brought dozens of species under imperial rule. Earth was supposed to be easy, a primitive planet with simple weapons and divided governments. "Doctor, in your professional opinion, what could cause this kind of reaction in our soldiers?" Dr. Krisa was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was uncertain. The only similar cases I've seen were in soldiers who discovered that everything they believed about reality was wrong. But that was from exposure to ancient artifacts or alien technologies beyond our understanding. According to our intelligence, humans barely had space travel. Barely had space travel, Vexthon repeated slowly. Yet our entire assault force is traumatized by something they encountered there. Admiral, there's something else. I've been reviewing the communication logs from the mission. The last coordinated transmission from the surface came from multiple squad leaders at exactly the same time. They all said the same single word. What word? Gone. Vexthon turned back to face the doctor. Gone, what's gone? That's all they said. Then radio silence until the retreat order. The Admiral's mind raced through possibilities. Had the humans fled? Had they hidden? Had they been evacuated by some unknown ally? None of it made sense. The Empire's sensors had detected billions of life forms on Earth right up until the invasion began. Doctor, I want you to begin intensive therapy sessions with the soldiers. We need to know what happened down there. Sir, I should warn you, forcing them to remember might be dangerous. Whatever they experienced, their minds are actively protecting themselves from it. We have to try. The Empire needs to understand what we're dealing with. Dr. Kreisa nodded reluctantly. I'll start with the officers. They might be more resistant to whatever psychological effect they encountered. As she left, Vexthon remained at his window staring at the stars. In the distance, he could see Earth, a small blue dot that should have been another easy victory for the Empire. Instead, it had somehow broken his finest soldiers without firing a shot. He thought about the word, gone. What could make an entire planet's population disappear just as an invasion began? And why were his soldiers so terrified of talking about it? The Admiral had a growing feeling that the Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed Earth was weak because it appeared primitive. But what if that appearance was intentional? What if they had just attacked something far more dangerous than they could imagine? As the night cycle began aboard the flagship, Vexthon could hear something he had never heard before on a military vessel, the sound of soldiers whimpering in their sleep. Whatever nightmares were haunting his warriors, they were all having the same one. The conquest of Earth was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something much darker, something that made even the Empire's bravest soldiers afraid to speak of what they had seen. Tomorrow, the questioning would begin in earnest. But tonight, Admiral Vexthon found himself staring at that small blue planet and wondering if his empire had just made the worst mistake in its 1,000-year history. Dr. Kreisa had been working with traumatized soldiers for over 20 years. She had helped warriors recover from the worst battles in Imperial history, but the Earth veterans were unlike anything she had ever encountered. She sat in her office surrounded by data screens showing brain scans, psychological profiles, and therapy session recordings. Every test pointed to the same impossible conclusion. These soldiers had experienced something that challenged their basic understanding of reality. Her first breakthrough came from studying the mission recordings. Every assault ship was equipped with cameras that recorded everything during planetary operations. She had spent 3 days reviewing hundreds of hours of footage, looking for clues about what had broken her patience. The early recordings showed exactly what she expected. Massive Zephyrian dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading for major population centers. Soldiers prepared their weapons and checked their armor. Officers reviewed tactical displays showing millions of human life signs in the cities below. Everything looked normal, until the moment the first soldiers touched the ground. Computer, replay segment 47A. Kreisa commanded. The screen showed a squad of 12 soldiers, landing in what intelligence had identified as New York City. The tactical display confirmed over 8 million human life signs in the immediate area. The soldiers moved through empty streets toward the massive buildings that stretched into the sky, but the streets weren't just empty, and they were abandoned in the strangest way possible. Kreisa watched as the camera captured details that made her skin crawl. On a street corner, a hot food vendor's cart still steamed with fresh meals. The vendor was nowhere to be seen, but coins were scattered on the ground as if customers had just walked away mid-transaction. A few blocks later, the squad found a park where children's swings still moved back and forth in the breeze. Fresh footprints in the sand showed where dozens of children had been playing just minutes before. Toys lay scattered everywhere, but not a single child remained. Computer, show vital signs for all humans in this sector during this time period. A new display appeared, showing the sensor readings from the ship. The timeline was impossible to believe. At 1432 ship time, sensors detected 47,000 humans in this sector of the city. At 1433, the number dropped to 23,000. At 1434, it showed 8,000. At 1435, the reading was 0. In just 3 minutes, nearly 50,000 humans had simply vanished. Computer, replay segment 62C. This recording came from a different squad investigating what humans called London. The same pattern repeated itself, but this time the camera caught something that made Crease's blood run cold. The squad was moving through a shopping area when they heard a sound. Human voices singing. They followed the sound to a large building and found hundreds of humans calmly walking in single-file lines toward a set of doors that led underground. The humans weren't running. They weren't panicking. They were singing together in perfect harmony, like they were participating in some kind of ceremony. Children held their parents' hands. Elderly humans walked with quiet dignity. Everyone moved with the same calm purpose. The squad leader tried to communicate with them, but the humans acted as if the Zephyrian soldiers weren't there. They just kept walking toward those underground doors, singing their strange, beautiful song. "Sir," one of the soldiers said on the recording, "the life sign readings are dropping. They're going underground, but our sensors can't track them past 30 meters depth." The squad leader ordered his team to follow the humans through the doors. The camera showed them descending into what should have been simple subway tunnels. Instead, they found passages that stretched far deeper than any subway system should go. The architecture down there was impossible. The tunnels were too wide, too smooth, and too precisely engineered for a species that supposedly barely had space travel. Lighting came from panels in the walls that glowed with soft, even light, technology that looked nothing like anything in the Empire's intelligence reports about human capabilities. Computer, enhance audio from segment 62C, time index 47.23. The enhanced audio revealed something terrifying. Under the humans singing, there was another sound. Machinery. Massive machinery operating somewhere far below, getting louder as more humans disappeared into the depths. Crease switched to recordings from other assault teams around the planet. The pattern was identical everywhere. Humans calmly evacuating into underground systems that shouldn't exist. Technology that didn't match intelligence reports. And sensor readings that showed entire populations vanishing into depths that Imperial scanners couldn't penetrate. But the most disturbing part was how organized it all was. This wasn't a panicked evacuation. It was a planned operation that had been prepared down to the smallest detail. Computer, compile all references to underground structures from the mission recordings. The search results filled her screen. Over 400 separate instances of assault teams discovering entrances to underground complexes. Every major city on Earth had them. Many rural areas had them too. Some entrances were hidden in buildings, others in natural formations like caves or valleys. But when the soldiers tried to follow the humans deeper, they found access passages that sealed themselves, doors that wouldn't open, tunnels that somehow became too narrow for Zephyrian soldiers to pass through, even though humans had just walked through them easily. Several teams reported finding areas where the tunnels simply ended in solid walls, walls that their instruments insisted weren't there, but which they couldn't pass through or break down. Computer, show me the final transmission log from ground command. The screen displayed the last coordinated message from the planet's surface. At exactly 1547 ship time, every squad leader sent the same report: no enemy contact. Human population has withdrawn to positions we cannot access. Recommend immediate extraction. Then 2 minutes later, a second message from every team leader. Gone. They're all gone. Dr. Crease leaned back in her chair, trying to process what she had learned. The Empire had invaded a planet with billions of inhabitants, but those inhabitants had simply walked away. Not fled in terror, not fought back desperately, but calmly executed what appeared to be a perfectly planned evacuation into underground facilities that shouldn't exist. The humans had known the invasion was coming. She pulled up the pre-invasion intelligence reports about Earth. According to Imperial scouts, humans had basic space travel, primitive weapons, and a fractured global government. They were supposed to be easy to conquer. A planet rich in resources but defended by a species barely out of their technological infancy. But the footage told a different story. The underground facilities showed engineering capabilities far beyond what the Empire's scientists could achieve. The coordinated evacuation of billions of people required communication and transportation systems that the intelligence reports insisted didn't exist. Either the Empire's intelligence was completely wrong, or the humans had been hiding their true capabilities. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to her office. "Enter," she called. Admiral Vexthon stepped inside, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Doctor, I need your preliminary findings. The High Command is demanding answers. Admiral, I don't think we conquered Earth. I think we walked into a trap." "What do you mean?" "The humans evacuated their entire planet in less than 4 hours. Billions of people gone without a trace. But this wasn't a panicked retreat. It was planned, organized, and executed flawlessly. They used underground systems that our intelligence never detected, systems that appear to be far more advanced than anything we credited them with." Vexthon sat down heavily. "Are you saying they knew we were coming?" "I'm saying they were ready for us. The question is, ready for what? If they just wanted to hide from us, why are our soldiers so traumatized? What did they see down there that broke their minds?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "Doctor, how long would it take to build underground cities capable of hiding billions of people? With our technology? Decades, maybe centuries. And if humans are as primitive as our report suggested, it would be impossible." Dr. Kriza paused, understanding the implications. "Unless they're not primitive at all." Dr. Kriza had tried every therapy technique she knew, but the Earth veterans remained silent. Until Sergeant Mordak finally broke. It happened during his 7th session. Kriza had been using a gentle memory recovery technique, helping him recall details from the mission without forcing him to relive the trauma. For 6 sessions, he had given her nothing but the same mechanical responses. Then, without warning, he started talking. "They knew we were coming," Mordak said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "They knew everything about us." Kriza quickly activated her recording equipment. "Who knew, Sergeant?" "The humans. We thought we were invading a primitive world. The intelligence report said they had simple weapons, basic technology. We expected resistance. We prepared for war." His hands shook as he spoke. "But there was no war. There was something much worse. Tell me what happened when you landed." Mordak closed his eyes, and for a moment Kriza thought he might retreat back into silence. Then he began to speak, and his words painted a picture more terrifying than any battle report she had ever heard. "My squad was assigned to secure what they called Chicago. 8 million humans lived there. According to our sensors, we landed in the center of the city, expecting immediate resistance. Instead, we found empty streets, empty, but the sensors showed millions of life signs. They were there, but they were leaving. Not running, walking. Calmly, like they had somewhere important to be. We tried to intercept them, but they acted like we weren't there, like we didn't exist." Mordak opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. "I ordered my team to follow groups of humans. They all headed toward the same places, buildings with entrances that led underground. When we tried to stop them, they would just walk around us. No fear, no anger, no emotion at all. What happened when you followed them underground? That's when we realized how wrong our intelligence was." Mordak's voice grew quieter. "The tunnels weren't crude shelters or simple subway systems. They were perfect. The walls were smooth as glass, perfectly curved. The lighting came from panels that gave off clean, bright light without any visible power source." He paused, his breathing becoming rapid. "Doctor, I've been in underground facilities on dozens of worlds. Imperial bunkers, enemy command centers, ancient ruins. I know what advanced engineering looks like. What we found under Earth made our best technology look like stone tools. How far did you follow them?" "We tried to go deeper, but the passages kept changing." "I swear they were changing, Doctor. Tunnels that had been wide enough for my whole squad would suddenly become too narrow for even one soldier. Doors that opened for humans would not open for us, no matter what we tried." Kriza made notes as he spoke. "What else did you see?" "Rooms. Massive rooms carved out of solid rock, but the surfaces were perfectly smooth. Some had machinery that hummed with power, but we couldn't identify what it did. Others looked like living spaces, but designed for populations far larger than what our report said lived in the city above." Mordak sat up suddenly, his eyes wide with remembered terror. But the worst part wasn't the technology. It was the evidence. Evidence of what? Evidence that they had been studying us for a very long time. Kreesa felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of evidence? We found chambers filled with trophies, pieces of Zephyrian equipment, weapons, even pieces of our ships. Some of it was from vessels that went missing decades ago in distant parts of the galaxy, things we assumed were lost to space pirates or mechanical failures. The implications hit Kreesa like a physical blow. They've been capturing our people? Not just capturing, studying. There were detailed drawings of Zephyrian anatomy, models of our weapons and ships, documents written in our language, but the handwriting was human. They understood our technology better than some of our own engineers. Mordak stood up and began pacing the small room. Doctor, we found star charts showing the locations of every major Imperial world. Trade routes, military outposts, even the location of the homeworld. Information that should have been impossible for them to obtain. How long had they been gathering this intelligence? The oldest documents we found were dated over 200 years ago, using our calendar system. They've been watching us since before most of our current colonies existed. Kreesa's mind raced with the implications. The Empire had thought they were conquering a primitive world, but instead they had attacked a species that had been secretly studying them for 2 centuries. Sergeant, what happened to your squad after you made these discoveries? Mordak's pacing stopped. He stood frozen in the middle of the room, his back to her. We tried to report what we found, but our communications were blocked. Not jammed, blocked. Someone was preventing our transmissions from reaching the fleet. The humans? We never saw a single human after we went underground, but we could hear them. Thousands of voices singing together somewhere deeper in the tunnels. The same song over and over in perfect harmony. What were they singing? I don't know, but it wasn't random. The melody had mathematical patterns like a code. Our linguist said it sounded like they were communicating with something. Kreesa made more notes. How did you finally get out? The tunnel started collapsing behind us. Not from damage, they were being sealed deliberately. We had to run to avoid being trapped. When we reached the surface, we found the entire city completely empty. No humans, no animals, no movement at all. That's when you reported that they were gone? Mordak nodded. But they weren't gone, Doctor. They were still there, just somewhere we couldn't reach them. And they wanted us to know it. What do you mean? Before we evacuated, we found messages, written in our language, left in places where we would definitely see them. All the same message, and thank you for visiting. We have learned much. We will be in touch soon. The room fell silent. Kreesa stared at her notes, trying to process what she had heard. The Empire hadn't invaded a primitive world. They had walked into the territory of a species that had been preparing for this encounter for centuries. Sergeant, why didn't you report this immediately when you returned? Mordak finally turned to face her. His expression was haunted, filled with a fear that went beyond physical danger. Because we realized what we had done, Doctor. We had just shown ourselves to something that had been hiding in the shadows, studying us, learning our weaknesses. And now they know we know they exist. Whatever game they've been playing for the past 2 centuries, we just forced them to move to the next level. Kreesa felt the weight of understanding settle on her shoulders. The Empire's assault on Earth hadn't been a conquest. It had been a test, and they had failed it completely. Sergeant, in your opinion, what will happen next? Mordak looked directly into her eyes, and she saw the same expression she had seen in every soldier who had returned from Earth. It wasn't the look of someone who had seen battle. It was the look of someone who had realized they were prey. Doctor, we've been watching them for a few months. They've been watching us for 200 years. What do you think happens next? Word of Sergeant Mordak's breakthrough spread quickly through the medical division. Within days, other soldiers began to talk. Each story confirmed the same terrifying reality. Humanity was not what the Empire had believed. Dr. Kreesa found herself working 18-hour days, documenting testimony after testimony. Each soldier added new pieces to a puzzle that revealed the true scope of what the Empire had stumbled into. Lieutenant Jexara had been part of the team that investigated what humans called Tokyo. Her account made Kreesa's blood run cold. We found a museum, Jexara said during her session, but it wasn't a human museum. It was about us, about the Empire. What do you mean? Room after room filled with Zephyrian artifacts. Our weapons, our armor, pieces of our ships. But the displays weren't random collections. They were organized like a scientific study. Each item had detailed analysis written in human languages and ours. Jexara's hands trembled as she continued. There were entire sections devoted to our biology. Detailed medical charts showing our anatomy, our weaknesses, our life cycles. Information that should have taken decades of study to compile. How could they have obtained such detailed information? That's what terrified us. Some of the specimens were fresh. Very fresh. Blood samples, tissue samples, even complete organs. The preservation technology was beyond anything we've seen. But the samples came from Zephyrians who had supposedly died in space accidents or pirate attacks. The implications were staggering. They've been hunting us? Not hunting, collecting. For research. Jexara paused, her breathing becoming labored. Doctor, we found video recordings of procedures being performed on our people. They were alive during the examinations. Captain Dormel's story was even worse. His team had investigated a human city called Moscow and discovered something that challenged everything the Empire knew about galactic history. We found libraries, he said, his voice hollow. Massive underground libraries that stretched for kilometers. But the books weren't about human history, they were about ours. Your history. Detailed records of every major Imperial campaign over the past 3 centuries. Battle plans, casualty reports, strategic analyses. They knew about wars we fought on the other side of the galaxy, conflicts that were classified at the highest levels. Dormel stood up and began pacing. But it wasn't just military history. They had records of our culture, our religion, our philosophy. They understood us better than we understand ourselves. How is that possible? They've been watching us, Doctor. Not just our ships or our colonies. They've been infiltrating our society. Some of those records could only have been obtained by someone with access to the Imperial archives on the homeworld. The revelation hit Krisa like a physical blow. You're saying they have agents in our society? I'm saying they've been studying us like laboratory animals for centuries and we never knew it. As more soldiers shared their stories, a pattern emerged that made the Empire's situation even more dire. The humans hadn't just been passively observing, they had been actively preparing for this exact scenario. Corporal Zethak had found what he described as war games, detailed simulations of Imperial invasion tactics and how to counter them. They had models of our ships, Doctor. Perfect scale models that showed every system, every weakness. They had run thousands of simulations of how we would attack their world. And their countermeasures? That's the terrifying part. They didn't plan to fight us at all. Every simulation showed the same strategy. Evacuation to underground facilities while gathering intelligence about our capabilities. They used our own invasion as the intelligence-gathering operation? Exactly. While we were trying to conquer their planet, they were studying how we operate, what technologies we use, how we think. We gave them everything they needed to understand us completely. But the most disturbing revelation came from Major Colvin, who had led the assault on what humans called Washington, D.C. His team had discovered something that changed how the Empire understood its place in the galaxy. We found their real history. Doctor, he said, his eyes haunted by memory. Not the primitive civilization our intelligence reported, their actual history. What did you learn? Humanity is older than us. Much older. They've been spacefaring for over 1,000 years, but they've been hiding it, pretending to be primitive while secretly exploring the galaxy. Krisa felt her understanding of reality shifting. Why would they hide their capabilities? Because they learned early that appearing weak is safer than appearing strong. They found dozens of dead civilizations, species that had been powerful enough to attract attention from other galactic powers and were destroyed for it. So they decided to appear helpless? Not helpless, invisible. They'd been building underground, exploring in secret, studying other species without revealing themselves. They've mapped the entire galaxy while everyone else thought they were confined to a single world. Major Colvin leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Doctor, we found star charts in their archives. They know about every intelligent species in the galaxy. They have detailed files on hundreds of civilizations, including many that the Empire has never encountered. What kind of files? Complete analyses. Strengths, weaknesses, technologies, cultures, psychology. They know exactly how dangerous each species is and how to deal with them if necessary. And the Empire? We were just one file among many, but our file was much thicker than the others. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just been studying the Empire. They had been studying everyone. building a comprehensive understanding of galactic civilization while remaining hidden in the shadows. Major, what was the conclusion of their analysis of the Empire? Colvin's expression became grim. According to their files, the Empire is classified as a moderate threat with expansion tendencies. They predicted we would eventually attempt to invade their world, and they had been preparing for that day for over 2 centuries. Preparing how? They know everything about us, Doctor. Our technology, our tactics, our psychology, our weaknesses. They've been ready for this war since before most of our colonies existed. But they didn't fight. They just disappeared. Because they didn't need to fight. They accomplished their objective without firing a shot. What objective? Major Colvin looked directly at her, and his expression was filled with a terror that went beyond fear of death. They wanted to see what we would do when we thought we had won, how we would behave, what technologies we would reveal, how our command structure would operate. We gave them a complete demonstration of Imperial military capabilities. Exactly. And now they have everything they need to destroy us if we become a real threat to them. Dr. Creesa sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had learned. The Empire hadn't conquered Earth. They had been studied, analyzed, and ultimately dismissed as a manageable threat by a species that had been manipulating galactic politics from the shadows for over a millennium. Major, in your opinion, what will humanity do now? That depends on what the Empire does next, Doctor. If we leave them alone, they'll probably continue hiding and watching. But if we try to attack them again, what? Then we'll discover why they've been studying us so carefully, and why every other species that threatened them is now extinct. 3 weeks after the first testimonies began, Admiral Vexton called an emergency meeting of the High Command. The conference room aboard the flagship was filled with the Empire's most senior officers, all struggling to process the reports that had been flooding in from Dr. Creesa's therapy sessions. Gentlemen, Vexton began, his voice heavy with exhaustion, we need to discuss what we've learned about Earth and its inhabitants. General Morton, the Empire's chief military strategist, spoke first. Admiral, these reports can't be accurate. Our intelligence thoroughly analyzed Earth before the invasion. They're a primitive species with basic technology. That's what we believed. Dr. Creesa interjected from her seat at the far end of the table. But the evidence suggests otherwise. Everything our soldiers witnessed points to a civilization far more advanced than our reports indicated. Evidence gathered by traumatized soldiers whose minds may have been compromised. General Morton countered. How do we know these aren't elaborate hallucinations or false memories? Before Dr. Creesa could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The lights dimmed as the bridge switched to combat status. Admiral, to the bridge immediately, came the urgent voice over the communication system. Vexton hurried to the command center, followed by the other officers. What he saw on the main display made his blood freeze. Report, he ordered. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from Earth, the sensor officer announced. Power readings are off the scale, higher than anything we've ever recorded. The main screen showed Earth as it appeared from their distant orbital position. But something had changed. The planet's surface was beginning to glow with patterns of light that formed geometric designs visible from space. Are those cities? General Morton asked. No, sir, the sensor operator replied. The energy is coming from underground. Miles underground. Whatever they built down there, it's activating. Communications officer Veldara looked up from her station with alarm. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's directed specifically at our fleet. On screen, the image of Earth disappeared, replaced by the figure of a human. But this wasn't like any human in their intelligence files. The being appeared to be very old, with white hair and deeply lined skin, but its eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost alien in its depth. Greetings, Admiral Vexton of the Zephyrian Empire, the human said in perfect Zephyrian language. I am Elder Chen, speaking on behalf of the Terran Collective. The bridge fell silent. No one had ever heard of a Terran Collective, and the fact that this human knew the Admiral's name sent chills through everyone present. I believe your soldiers have shared some interesting discoveries with your medical staff, Elder Chen continued. We thought it was time for a more direct conversation. How are you transmitting to our ship? Vexton managed to ask. Admiral, your species has been using radio technology for approximately 800 years. We have been using quantum entanglement communication for over 1,200 years. Distance is not a barrier for us. General Morton stepped forward. If you're so advanced, why did you hide from us? Why didn't you resist our invasion? Elder Chen smiled, and something about that expression made every officer on the bridge uncomfortable. General Morton, we didn't hide from you. We studied you. Your invasion was educational. Educational. For the past 247 years, we have been monitoring Zephyrian expansion throughout this galactic region. Your species follows predictable patterns. You identify targets, gather intelligence, overwhelm them with superior numbers, then absorb their resources and populations into your empire. The human paused, and when he continued, his voice carried a note of something that might have been pity. We wanted to see how you would behave when you thought you had encountered a helpless species. The results were exactly what our behavioral models predicted. Dr. Krisa, who had joined them on the bridge, spoke up. You've been manipulating us. Dr. Krisa, we prefer the term observing. Your species is not unique, Admiral. We have watched 17 different civilizations follow similar expansion patterns. Most eventually learn to coexist with their neighbors. Some do not. And what happens to the ones who don't learn? Vexthon asked, though he dreaded the answer. They encounter situations that force them to reconsider their approach to galactic politics. The lights on the bridge flickered as new readings appeared on the sensor displays. Energy signatures from Earth were spiking exponentially, and long-range sensors were detecting something impossible. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, his voice shaking. I'm reading multiple energy signatures throughout the solar system. Whatever they're activating, it's not just on Earth. Explain. There are structures on every planet, every moon, even in the asteroid belt. They're all coming online simultaneously. Elder Chen's image nodded approvingly. Very good, Admiral. Your sensors are more advanced than we expected. Yes, we have installations throughout this system. We've had them for quite some time. How long? General Morton demanded. We began construction approximately 900 years ago, long before your empire existed. This system has been our fortress for nearly a millennium. The implications hit Admiral Vexthon like a physical blow. You've been here all along. The whole time we thought you were a primitive species confined to one world. You had already claimed this entire solar system. And 17 others, Elder Chen said calmly. Admiral, humanity learned long ago that survival requires preparation. We prepare for everything, including us, especially you. The Zephyrian Empire represents exactly the kind of threat we have been preparing to counter for centuries. An aggressive, expansionist species with superior military technology, but limited strategic thinking. Dr. Krisa stepped closer to the screen. What do you want from us? Nothing, Doctor. This conversation is a courtesy, not a negotiation. We are informing you that your invasion has been noted, analyzed, and filed. Our response will depend entirely on your next actions. What kind of response? Vexthon asked. That depends on whether the Empire chooses to learn from this experience or repeat its mistakes. General Morton's face flushed with anger. Are you threatening the Empire? Elder Chen's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes grew colder. General, in the past 200 years, humanity has encountered 43 species that posed potential threats to our survival. 37 of them learned to coexist peacefully with us after initial contact. And the other 6? They continued to pose threats. The bridge fell silent. The implications of those simple words hung in the air like a death sentence. Admiral, Elder Chen continued, your fleet will be allowed to depart this system unharmed. You have 7 of your standard time units to reach the edge of our territory. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety. Your territory? This is one solar system. Admiral, I suggest you review your star charts. We suspect you will find some interesting discrepancies between what you thought you knew about this region of space and what actually exists here. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Communications. Open a channel to Fleet Intelligence, Vexthon ordered. I want a complete review of our territorial maps for this entire sector. 20 minutes later, the results came back. Fleet Intelligence had discovered massive gaps in their knowledge of local space. Star systems they thought were uninhabited showed signs of advanced civilization. Trade routes they believed were secure ran directly through what appeared to be human territory. Admiral, the intelligence officer reported, preliminary analysis suggests that humanity controls territory spanning at least 40 star systems. Our expansion into this region has been proceeding directly into their space, and we never knew it. Dr. Krisa looked at the star chart display with growing horror. They've been watching us approach for decades. Our entire expansion strategy has been guided by their intelligence gathering. What do you mean? Think about it, Admiral. Our scouts always found the best targets, the most vulnerable species, the easiest conquest routes. What if that wasn't luck? What if someone was guiding us toward specific targets while steering us away from others? The realization hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. The Empire's expansion hadn't been driven by their own strategic brilliance. It had been carefully managed by humanity to avoid conflicts that might reveal their true capabilities. They've been hurting us, General Morton said quietly. Like livestock. Admiral Vexthon stared at the display showing human territory surrounding Imperial space on 3 sides. The Empire wasn't the dominant power in this region. They were a minor player being managed by a civilization that had been manipulating galactic politics for over a millennium. Communications. Send a message to High Command, he ordered. Priority 1. The Earth mission has revealed a strategic threat beyond current Imperial capabilities. Recommend immediate withdrawal from this sector and peaceful diplomatic contact. As the fleet began its retreat from human space, Vexthon couldn't shake the feeling that they had just encountered something far more dangerous than a superior military force. They had met a species that had turned patience into a weapon, preparation into an art form, and the appearance of weakness into the ultimate strength. Humanity had been waiting for them.